Promenade across the floor, sashay right on out the door, and into the glade, and everybody promenade.
What we're doing, what we're promoting, and what tonight we're saying how to go ahead and start doing is to contain your entire project within one platform. I can use R for any analytical thing that I want to do. For me, R is sufficient. I can also use R to summarize. I can also use R to craft the story I'm trying to tell around the analyses themselves. And that's just so powerful. So the one-stop shop aspect that's conforming to this reproducible research standard is saying, I'm no longer going between at least two different programs to hit two different components of my project. My project is my project, and the data analyses and the summary of the analyses have equal importance, and they're all accomplished within the same program. One of the very practical ways that the efficiency of authoring within R really hits me is what I'm calling here the dynamic nature of data summaries. If you're writing in the same platform as your data analysis, you can just call up the data. And we do that through what are called inline code. And so tick and then the letter R says this is an R command that's coming up. An nrow is a built-in R function. It just says give me the number of rows in whatever the object is that I'm going to call out. And the object here, I'm just calling data. So what this is going to do is it's going to present a number. It's going to present a number that reflects the number of rows that are currently in that data object. So now if I collect more data, I don't need to go back to my word processor and amend that number. I just rerun my script and it automatically reads in the data because the data is part of this living project itself. And so error arises from all kinds of different sources, but there is a very obvious potential source of error if you're just dealing with two different programs. If you have one program that's focused on summarizing, writing, and another program that's based on the data analyses themselves, there is potential just in the back and forth between those two programs of a miscommunication. And then in terms of the things that you can produce, this is a non-exhaustive list. There are so many different things that you can do entirely within R. And so one that is important to me is a technical report, which is simply the documentation of the production of something. Dashboards are really, really popular. You can fully author these dashboards using these processes and tools that we're talking about. The thing that I've really been geeked up on over the course of the last year or so are these presentations. You can do diagrams, as we've been focusing on diagrams the last few weeks. You can do conference posters. What we have today is we actually have a couple of different options. We have the old R Markdown ecosystem, but we also have this new platform that they're supporting called Quarto. And Quarto and R Markdown, they're both going to be able to create websites and presentations and articles and tech reports and feedback reports. And so in terms of how do I get started using R as an authoring platform, two routes you can go. You can go the R Markdown route or you can go the Quarto route. Now that we've been fully using Quarto for the last year or so, I think I would also recommend using Quarto. And so in terms of what you're doing, my recommendation would be to use one of these comfy RevealJS presentations. You need the software to be installed outside of R as well. I'll go ahead and do that installation. So make sure you have R, make sure you have an IDE like RStudio, download the Quarto package, and then look for the Quarto installation separate from R. So this is entirely something that happens independent from R itself. It's a separate piece of software that you want to install on your computer. You don't need to put it anywhere specific. You don't need to have a working directory that's linked to it. It just needs to be on your computer. If you're operating from the perspective of this is a quantitative analytical platform, you may be used to working with scripts. So that's the first option here. You see R Markdown and Quarto. And so we're gonna open a Quarto presentation. This wizard is going to walk you through some fairly standard options. There are kind of three main presentation types that you can author out of the box with Quarto. The RevealJS is the one that I've been using, and it's the default one. You don't really need to give it a author or title if you don't want, because those are going to appear in your YAML up here. And so if you wanted to change it, we could change it. We can just say trying out or getting started. You're probably going to want to, without much tweaking, just test your file here. And when you hear me say QMDs, this is going to be saved as a QMD type of file. That's the 3-letter extension on the file itself. It's not saved anywhere yet. It doesn't have a QMD associated with it. But as soon as and again, this render button that you see here is something that pops up if we've installed the Quarto package within R itself. I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now it's going to prompt me, say, well, okay, we're going to save it as a QMD, but you should probably give it a name. And we'll call it Spot, because Spot's a nice name. Now, Spot's going to go ahead and render. There's not a ton of content in here. If I pop that out, I can navigate it with the keypad. Now, if we wanted to start to play with this, you see some markdown here. So you see these hashtags in the context of presentations for Quarto. Those hashtags are defining a new slide. The way that you interact with R, the quantitative processor, is to use what are called chunks. These chunks are identified by these 3 ticks. This is an R chunk. You can have a Python chunk. I'm loading in the Plotly object, and I'm asking for my figure to be rendered. So let's see what that does. So there it is. There are some options that we could play with in terms of where this is rendered. Underneath the paragraph or in columns. There are different themes that can be applied as well. In these in this front matter bit, the YAML specification, these are global changes that you want to impact the entire document that you're creating. We're going to have to pay attention to indenting. So what I just did there was I took the RevealJS specification at the end of format, did a hard return and an indent, so it's one level over. And now I'm going to do the same thing under RevealJS and give it some additional commands. Solarized, I don't know what that is. Let's see if this works. And so it should apply that theme to every slide in my slide deck, and it looks like it's kind of a beached out kind of look. You can see the font changed and the background's changed. The themes largely play with font, things like the location of your title. Is it centered? Is it left justified? Is it right justified? Color schemes as well. Let's try to get some different fonts in here so we can have a CSS chunk. So I'm going to use 3 tick marks and then curly brackets. Default one is going to be R. I'm going to change that to CSS. So we're not going to put R code in here as we have below. So I have a R command here. What I've been using for fonts is Google Fonts, and they're fairly easy to get. It's called Dancing Script. You can just copy that, or if you want, you can type it in. But I'm going to indicate that at the end of my import font command here. And so this is a CSS command that just says I'm interested in this particular font. If I want to use it, I'm going to need to create some CSS. Let's actually just call it dancing. Then we're going to say font family. You do want single or double apostrophes here. I'm going to call it out. And you're going to end that line with a semicolon. Now this is really important for CSS. You're ending the line with a semicolon. And I'm just going to call it exactly the same as what I have on my line 9 specification. It's called Dancing Script up there. It's called Dancing Script down here. Let's see if we can apply it to information in here. Now there's 2 different ways to apply CSS. And so we're going to start with a bracketed span. Let's just take Quarto. And the bit that you're interested in applying the font to use square brackets. Adjacent to that, in curly brackets, we're going to tell it the styling that we want to apply. The styling that you want to apply is defined here on line 11. It's whatever you call this information in the curly brackets. So now what we're saying is everything in the square brackets, apply this styling to. Let's re-render that and take a look. So there's Quarto. Not all that noticeable, so there's a few different things we could do. We could put a color in there as well. Colors, I usually specify with hex codes, and so one hex code that we know is badass, we've been using that. Now that should stand out quite a bit more. So if I re-render this, Quarto is now in that color. Those are fonts. Now images, there's two things to pay attention to with images. With a theme that we're using where we have this black background, you're going to want to think about whether your image has an existing background or not. So the image types that have transparent backgrounds are usually in a PNG or SVG format. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for Yogi the bear. We'll ask for a transparent background. What I like to do with images is you can store them locally, but you can also just take them from the internet. So I'm going to copy that address. The image itself, it's exclamation point, square brackets, and then in parentheses, you put the file path to the image. Quarto has a fantastic way to customize what these look like, where they are, the size of them, and it's a .absolute command. And so that .absolute, it takes values of height, width, top, bottom, left, and right. So if we want to move Yogi from the left of the screen here to the right, I can simply say right equals 0. It also did something that we didn't expect, which is resized it. We can go ahead and alter that too. So we can say, no, I like him big. So let's reset the height. And so here we should have a bigger Yogi. There's really big. He's on the right, which is a good location for him because he looks like he's running.